Hello everyone, thanks for coming outside with me today. Today we're talking everything releases in terms of how they affect your tune with your face pressure, your anchor point, and everything else in between. So I'm going to go over a litany of different releases today and talk about how anchor point might change. You might have to change your traditional anchor point, which is something I had to do actually just this week. I'm going to go through all those different things as well as talk about how face pressure and release pressure and everything else can affect the tune of your bow. So as usual, I'm going to start with kind of cheaper things and move my way up in price point and talk about how some are a little bit more advantageous than others, but every archer is different and you're going to have to potentially change your release depending on the type of anchor point that you have, the type of face pressure that you have, and that also depends on the axle to axle length of your bow and your draw length. So for example, me, I'm like a 31 to almost a 31.5-inch draw length. I like a longer axle to axle bow that really opens up the string angle when I'm at full draw, and that can really dictate where I'm anchoring on my face depending if I'm using a handheld or an index style release. So first things first here, let's start with a cheaper style release. This is a True Fire, and as you can see, I've gone through a lot of different releases over the years to find the one that really suits me. This is a cheaper True Fire. It's got a Velcro strap on the wrist here. The arm is pretty fixed. You can kind of shorten it up a little bit, but not too much. And the jaws you have to open and close manually. They do not reset themselves automatically. So this is a cheaper style release. It's a little bit harder to have a more modular position for the arm, and that could really place it where it's really long in your hand or really short. And we all know that we want to have a release that's a little bit shorter so we can really curl our finger just like on a rifle. So I'm going to be demonstrating some practice draws with the 2020 Elite Result, the Target model. Very excited to shoot this bow. I do have it at its maximum 31-inch draw length, and I'm shooting it at 60 pounds. I'm going to take a whole bunch of different draws here with the different types of releases. I don't have this bow set up for a wrist style release. I have it set up for a handheld style release, which in this case is the Scott Ascent, which is a Hinge style release, all stainless steel with 2 moons. We'll get to him in a little bit. But I want to first talk about the individual types of anchoring points you would have with an index style release, which is much more common. Now you'll notice that I have the release arm coming up to about the base of my fingers. It's been a while since I used a wrist style release, and more importantly, it's been a while since I used this much cheaper Velcro one. This peep is not going to be in the right place when I come to anchor at full draw, but I want to show you different anchoring points on my face. So I can clip the release on here, and I'm going to be demonstrating face pressure. So if I come to full draw, and if I would usually anchor, I usually put the index knuckle on my fist right in behind my earlobe there. But if I do that with this bow in this setup, I'm getting face pressure, okay? And what I mean by face pressure is this part right here between the cheek and my nose is contacting the string. I'm getting a little bit of push. I definitely do not want that. If you start imparting pressure onto the string, it's gonna push it one way or the other. And with a bow with a high percentage let off, 85, 90%, that will actually push it in one direction, and it'll actually cause the arrow to then do a little extra fishtail. You want that arrow to be flying straight and oscillating and paradoxing the way it should be. You don't want to add that extra bit of pressure and cause an extra oscillation. You're going to get a tear through paper in particular that you'll never be able to get out if you don't eliminate that face pressure. So I'm going to come to full draw again. I'm going to add that anchor, and I'm getting just enough face pressure. I know from shooting bows for so many years, that little bit of push, that little bit of face pressure is going to cause a tuning issue. So instead of anchoring so high, I'm going to anchor a little bit lower. Instead of anchoring with that knuckle in behind my earlobe, in that ear socket, I'm actually going to anchor a little bit lower. And that completely rectifies that face pressure. Now the string is coming up closer to my mouth and then coming in contact with my nose. It allows for a much cleaner shot. It allows for that face pressure to not be there. And this release is set up for me. The length is right, everything's good, but just with that simple anchor switch, I can eliminate that face pressure and allow for a nice clean, hopefully nice clean tear through the paper that I can easily rectify. So let's move up in price point a little bit. These are true ball releases. One is just a Velcro strap and one is the buckle strap, but that doesn't mean they're actually different. The one head is actually larger than the other, And in terms of where the triggers sweep back, this one is actually closer to the head or to the front of the jaws of the caliper. And this one is much further back. So let's put this buckle strap on here because I hate Velcro releases. Now, I know it's going to be hard for you to actually see on camera at that distance. By putting that fist knuckle back in the socket behind my earlobe, I have a little bit of face pressure, but it's not nearly as bad as with the first release. It actually is almost non-existent. Same style of release, but what has happened here? Well, the arm is a little bit shorter, not by much, maybe 1/8 of an inch. The trigger is actually a little bit more swept back than it was with the original TrueFire release that I shot first there. So that allows this knuckle to come out of the way more, allows me to curl my finger a little bit more, relieve some of that pressure on my cheek, and I can send a much cleaner shot down range. So let's continue to move up in price point, and here we have a Scott Ghost, which I'm really liking as particular because it's just a hook style release instead of a caliper style with the 2 jaws opening. This one works off a magnet, this one works off a spring. The arm is shorter, so you think it would sit shorter in my hand, but if you notice, the trigger actually sits more proud. It actually sticks farther forward. The swept back nature of this one allows it to be really close to the base of my hand, whereas this one here, the trigger is actually significantly, almost an inch or more further forward. So that will change how I anchor up here. And I guarantee you, I'm probably going to get a little bit of face pressure by anchoring with this knuckle back and behind my ear. So let's go ahead and come to full draw, doing my usual anchor. And I have so much face pressure. It's not even funny. It's just so up. It's now granted, the peep is not where it's supposed to be because I don't have this bow set up for an index style release. I have it set up for a handheld style release. But the amount of face pressure that I'm getting between my cheek and my nose is ridiculous. So I need to lower my release point, or my anchor point rather, with the release. And it's much cleaner down there. So I have to kind of put my knuckle on the back side of my jaw rather than instead of up in here, it has to be down in here. And it's a much cleaner release. I don't get that face pressure, and I guarantee you, if I tried to tune, because I did, I tried to tune my Elite Cure with my index style release getting ready for the hunting season, and I ended up with a lot of face pressure, and I was getting a right tear that I could not get rid of. I switched my anchor point, moved my peep up to allow for that lower anchoring system. The tear went away, and I was shooting bullet holes through paper. Just that little bit of change, because this trigger is up further, even though the shaft is shorter. Just that knuckle change from here to here. We're talking maybe 1.5 inches, 2 at the most. Just that little bit of anchor. It changes a lot. It might change your sighting in, it might change your peep location. That's okay. You want to eliminate that face pressure, get that nice clean release that we're all looking for, because it will really help in the tuning process. All right, so let's switch over to handheld style releases, and we're going to start with thumb buttons. So they still activate on a trigger. This is an old TrueFire. I'm not going to use him. He mechanically does not work safely anymore, so I'm going to be using the Scott Pursuit. It does have a wrist strap just so it doesn't fall out of the tree stand, but it is drawn with your hand and activate with the thumb button. Now, a handheld style of release is going to be a totally different anchor system, because remember, with an index style, your hand sits flush to your face with your fingers out this way. With a thumb or a hinge style, they actually sit at an angle, almost sometimes completely the opposite direction, vertically up and down instead of horizontally. In this case, with a thumb button, it's going to be a little bit in between, but it definitely activates all with the thumb. So once this is clicked and I move the barrel, it activates and I'm able to have a nice crisp clean release. So since my hand is backwards, I can't do the index knuckle on my fist behind the earlobe trick. So I'm going to deliberately anchor in an improper location to show you what excess amount of face pressure looks like. It's okay to have a little bit, but it's really hard to have repeatable face pressure. I prefer to have none at all, because repeatable face pressure is really hard in the heat of a moment during a shoot where there's money on the line, or when a big buck is standing in front of you at 20 yards. So I draw the bow, I'm going to add that little bit of angle here, not a whole lot, and I'm going to add excessive amounts of face pressure, right? So I'm anchored real low on my jawbone, and you notice my cheek is getting pushed up, my nose is involved. I don't want that. I got to lower it again, and it comes up real clean. Now I can hook my thumb, And then I'm able to execute that really nice clean shot. Again, this is just a simple change. There's not a whole lot of movement going on here. It's not like I have to completely undo everything I know about anchoring correctly. I just simply have to move the location to eliminate that face pressure. And if you're a person who's getting random tears through paper, or you're getting a tear that you just can't get rid of, and your fletching clearance is good, and your bow is timed, and your center shot's good, this is probably the #1 factor for those things. And unless you have somebody watch you, or you take pictures or video of yourself, it can be really hard to catch. And particularly if you're really used to smashing that string into your face, it's a comfort thing, right? And you have to learn to backtrack on that and get used to a different anchor system. My nose is still making good contact with the string, so I have a good anchor point. But outside of that, there's no cheek pressure, there's no neck pressure. I'm not torquing the release one way or another. And that's another thing you have to be aware of. And this is a problem with handheld releases more so than it is with an index style release, because you're pulling back from your wrist and it's more of a straight line. With a handheld style release, if you start twisting your wrist or start incorporating your elbow and forearm at an angle, then you could start twisting, right? You're twisting the D loop off and you're throwing it at a weird angle again. Be really aware of that as you're starting to work with a handheld style release, and particularly if you've never used one before. So the last 2 releases I have here are Hinge style releases, and these are not for the faint of heart. If you're just starting out with archery, I would not start with the Hinge release. There's a lot of intricacies that go into a Hinge style release that make it work and could make it not work if you're not careful, and you'll punch yourself right in the face when you're trying to come back to full draw. But even though it's a lot like a thumb button, I still have to watch my anchor point so I don't get that face pressure. Now, I have set up this result with this release, so I should be able to come back and anchor, come right into my system, come right into my peep, and be able to execute a clean shot. So as you can see, I have that nice low anchor that puts my face higher up on the string, my peep a little bit higher up. And that is exactly where I want it. Now I'm going to bring my release hand up higher, closer to the earlobe, and you see all the face pressure. It's on my cheek, it's on my nose. I kind of have to mash my nose to get down into the string so I can actually bring it across my face so I can see through a peep. Bring it a little bit lower. And I get to execute a really nice clean release just by bringing my release hand down a little bit, brings the string away from this fleshy part of my cheek, and I'm able to have a nice clean anchor, a consistent anchor, and a nice clean release of the arrow. So I hope this goes to show you that even though you might be going from index style to index style, or thumb button to thumb button, or hinge to hinge, that there is some different intricacies in between different brands and in between different styles of releases, even though if they're built on the same platform, the same idea. It's really important to watch how much face pressure you're getting, watch how much release twist you're getting or release pressure. You want it to be a nice linear line from the point of the arrow all the way back to the tip of your elbow. You'll get that nice clean release. You won't get a random fishtail, and it'll make your tuning life a whole lot easier. So that's all for this video. If you have any questions about how I work with releases or how I tune my bow or anything else that pertains to the world of archery, follow the links in the description below. Hit me up on Facebook and Instagram. My email's even down there, and of course you can always leave a comment here on YouTube. Hope you're able to get outside, enjoy the sport of archery hunting if you so choose. Definitely enjoy God's beautiful sunshiny creation, and we'll get to see you next time.